Just how far will the Iran war spill over from the Gulf countries to Lebanon, Turkey, Azerbaijan, Cyprus and Sri Lanka? The conflict has been spreading. But what are the dangers of this war expanding even further beyond the Middle East? This is Inside Story. Hello again, I'm James Bays. It's been a week since the war between Israel, the United States and Iran started with strikes on Tehran. The conflict soon spread to neighbouring countries who've been on the receiving end of hundreds of Iranian missiles and drones. Targets in countries beyond the region have also been hit, with some warning those attacks could open new fronts. Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian has now apologised to Gulf states, saying Tehran will limit its attacks on them in future. But with no sign that Israel and the US will end the war, how likely are its effects, economic and political, to spread further around the world? And what are the implications of a widening war? We'll discuss all of this with our panel of guests in a moment. But first, this report from Imogen Kimber.
After the US and Israel attacked Iran last weekend, the war has escalated. More than 1,300 people have been killed in attacks on government and residential areas across Iran. And Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has been assassinated. But US strikes have also hit targets further afield, with an attack on Iranian warship, the Iris Dena, off the coast of Sri Lanka. And Iran has hit back. Tehran has targeted the Israeli city of Tel Aviv with a barrage of attacks, as well as other towns. But Iran has also widened the fight, targeting Qatar, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Oman and the UAE with missiles and drones. It says it's targeting US bases, but has hit hotels and airports, as well as the liquefied natural gas in Qatar and the Saudi Aramco oil works. Iran's Revolutionary Guard has also said it's closed the Straits of Hormuz, the transit route for 20% of the world's energy supplies, all of which has pushed up energy prices. Beyond the Gulf, NATO air defences in Turkey say they took out a drone, and Azerbaijan airport has been hit, although Iran says it's not responsible for either. And Cyprus has seen Shahed-like drones overhead. But despite those attacks on its regional allies, US President Trump says the war is going well.
By the way, in Iran we're doing very well. Somebody said, how would you score it from 0 to 10? I said I'd give it a 12 to a 15. Their army is gone. They're just about, look, their navy is gone. Their communications are gone. Their leaders are gone.
And Iran has rejected Trump's request for an unconditional surrender.
That we surrender unconditionally. They should take that dream to their grave. What we are committed to is international law, human frameworks, and the principles they talk about. They should be committed to those principles. They can't ignore the rights of any country, including Iran.
So there seems to be no end in sight to what has escalated into a regional war with global reach. Imogen Kimber, Al Jazeera for Inside Story.
Let's discuss all of the issues on this with our guests who are here on Inside Story today. And joining me in the studio is Saleh, a senior lecturer in Iranian studies at the Centre for Arab and Islamic Studies at the Australian National University. From Bethesda, Maryland, Michael O'Hanlon, senior fellow and director of research in foreign policy at the Brookings Institution. And from Istanbul, Serhan Afacan, director of the Centre of Iranian Studies in Ankara. Thank you, all three of you, for joining us on Inside Story. If I can start, perhaps, with you, Alam. We are 1 week into this war. We've passed the 1 week mark. Let's see where you think we are in terms of what the US has achieved. But let me put it to you what President Trump said, because he was asked this question in recent hours. And his reply, we are doing very well. Someone said, how would you score it from 0 to 10? I would say give it a 12 or a 15 out of 10. Is that what you would say?
No, I would say that he's exaggerating. I think both sides started this war with absolutely different strategies for the United States or President Trump in particular and Israel at the same time. The war started to be short, sharp, quick, and decisive. But this did not happen. I mean, now we're a week after the war. We don't see any sign of regime collapse as what they have been expecting. We don't see any internal domestic insecurity or what they have been expecting, that people would go out and perhaps to work against the regime. On the other hand, however, we see that the Iranian kind of war strategy was to prolong this war, to expand it geographically, and to complicate the war in many different ways, using, in other words, focusing on the balance of threats rather than the balance of power. Because there is no balance of power between Iran and United States and Australia on the other hand. What we have, however, is a balance of threats. I mean, using asymmetrical means and methods in order to deter the United States and Israel's invasion. And therefore, they used geography as a weapon, like a Strait of Hormuz. They expanded it. They used their own proxies in the region to expand and to complicate the issue. And also, they have used a different kind of missile strategy by using their old, cheap missiles in the beginning in order to exhaust the defense system, both in Israel and in the region, to make it costly. To make it costly was important as part of the war strategy for Iran. And I think so far Iranians are more successful in their strategy, and I think it's President Trump doesn't have any exit kind of a strategy for this war.
Okay, let me bring in Michael. You're there on the outskirts of DC, Michael. With you work in DC. I know your ear is to the ground there. The US or the administration is not even using the word war with regard to what's going on. But as you just heard, it has expanded, and by my count, conflict has now impacted 14 countries.
Yes, greetings. I would certainly call it a war. One hopes, as my colleague that you just spoke with has said, that this would be a limited and short war. But of course, as he said, it has expanded, and it's not clear where it will go. The only slight difference I might offer is that I do not see Iran being at all successful right now. Half their leadership is dead. Their country is increasingly in a shambles, and they don't really have a good concept for what to do about it. They're causing some damage, but it's damage that is not of a scale as to require the United States or Israel to stop their air campaign. And so I think the real question here is just how committed is President Trump to his goal of regime change, which I consider unrealistic. Apparently, the National Intelligence Council of the United States considers it extremely unlikely with the given kinds of military force we are applying. We know from history that air power does not tend to induce revolutions. And the Iranian opposition is quite weak and has spent 47 years just trying to survive in the face of a brutal and deeply entrenched regime. So in that regard, I believe the Iranian regime will probably hold on to power, but it will be with many of its leaders being chased and killed, and with its country being set back economically and militarily.
Sahan, I mentioned the geographical spread we've seen in just a week, including one attempt, it looks, although it was a little bit unclear, too far all the way to where you are, to Turkey, but bringing in Cyprus, bringing in Azerbaijan. Do you see other countries getting drawn in militarily, or do you think that Iran is slowly using up its longer-range missiles?
Well, actually, let's just start with just today, President Pezeshkian of Iran apologized for these attacks, actually, against its neighbors in the Gulf region. And he said that the leadership, the Temporary Leadership Council, approved suspending attacks on the neighboring countries. definitely Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, etc., etc. So, I mean, it was a mistake. And apparently, President Pezeshkian accepted that this was a mistake and Iran will not go to that direction and if it's not attacked from those territories. Second of all, what happened on the 4th of March against Turkey, Iran said that they did not fire any missiles against Turkey, but an Iran missile was shot down in the Turkish airspace. But then Iranian president and Iranian leadership, they said that they did not fire any missiles against Turkey. And then 2 days later, on the 5th of March, the autonomous Nakhchivan Republic, which of Azerbaijan, an airport was hit by Iranian drones on the 5th of March, and President Aliyev very much and very harshly criticized Iran for this action, and he said, "I have gone to your embassy and I have shown my condolences to your losses, especially upon the death of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, and now you are targeting us." This, he said, it's not acceptable. And then the next day, Iranian leadership, they stated that they did not attack or target Azerbaijan either. So there is a very huge confusion going on, and there is this lack of leadership in Iran at the moment.
Okay,
I think it's creating
let me focus in on that a little bit more, if I may, because you mentioned the comments of the Iranian president. I think it would be useful to actually listen to what he had to say a little earlier.
Here I feel it necessary, regarding neighboring countries that were attacked by Iran, to apologize on my own behalf. Because of the vicious assault on us, we lost our supreme leader, our compatriots and loved ones. Our armed forces put their lives on the line to defend our territorial integrity. When the commanders were no longer there, acting on their own initiative, our armed forces carried out all the actions that were necessary, and they conducted the operations that were necessary and protected our country with strength. We do not intend to conduct an assault on neighboring countries, but like I've said before, they are our brothers. We have to be hand in hand with our brothers in peace. And the Interim Leadership Council approved a decision yesterday. That decision was relayed to our forces that they should no longer attack neighboring countries unless there is an attack on Iran staged on their soil.
So, what do you think that actually means? Because as we've heard, it has been a bit of a confused picture. Does that mean no more attacks on, for example, the Gulf countries? Or does it mean no more attacks that aren't attacks on US bases in the Gulf countries? Or is there potentially a division between the political leadership and the military, or some of the military commanders aren't not contactable and are still firing?
Yeah. I think it shows that there are divisions between different sectors within this political system, and also a military sector. And military sector, within military sector, we also have divisions. We have the National Army, we have the Revolutionary Guard, that they both have different visions, different views towards how to deal with these issues. And more importantly, usually and naturally, the supreme leader is the figure that coordinates between these divisions. I mean, it's very natural. We have always been seeing these kind of divisions between Revolutionary Guard, reformists, pragmatists, different kind of factions in politics. But now, in the absence of the supreme leader, this division is more evident in decision-making. And this led into Revolutionary Guard to act independently, particularly soon after losing many, not only the Supreme Leader, but many high-ranking Revolutionary Guard officers. So this gap has occurred. There was a kind of a political vacuum for sure. And some of these Revolutionary Guard guys definitely have made the decision by themselves. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they have a kind of a leadership crisis. It means the coordination between different groups that has been in a normal time, has always been there, is just led into some miscommunication, misinformation, and so on, which finally led into this.
So, Michael, I mean, if everyone obeys the president, it suggests to me that it's probably unlikely there is going to be an expansion militarily of this war, certainly by Iran. But the war is still going to expand in terms of its effects, and it's now global, is it not?
Yes, I think we'll see, for example, energy markets around the world increasingly affected. And I was getting gas for my car yesterday at $3.50 a gallon, which of course is very inexpensive in the United States compared to most of the rest of the world. But I was thinking that's the last time I'm going to see prices below $4 a gallon for a long time. And of course, many people are affected much more severely than I am. And so I think with, a third of seaborne oil in the world passing through the Strait of Hormuz in normal times, that will be one of the big effects. Also, of course, natural gas coming from Qatar and elsewhere is crucial for world energy as well as fertilizer markets. So those are just some of the ways in which we'll see ripple effects even beyond military trade-offs and exchanges and blows. And I think there will be increasingly pressure on President Trump to rethink his goals for the war, because the maximalist goal of regime change could lead to a very long conflict. And I doubt that is going to be easily accepted by much of the rest of the world.
So, Han, one of the problems we have here is what is the goal of this war? Because normally that's how you judge a military operation. Did it achieve its objective? But the objectives of this war, when you just look at what's been stated by the US, they've been all over the place.
Well, I think, there is no clear strategy of the United States in this war. We know that. People have been talking about that from the beginning. And over the last few days, people even try to criticize Trump administration for that. What is your strategy? Just remember, for example, last year in June, when the U.S. attacked Iran's nuclear sites on the 22nd of June, there was a clear strategy. And they hit, and President Trump said that we have obliterated their nuclear program. Okay, so they are not going to be producing nuclear weapons if they had such an intention, of course, which the Iran administration says they don't. That's another story. But now he doesn't have a clear strategy. And I think for Iran, the strategy is very clear. It is to survive the war. Basically, if they survive at the end of the war, that's going to be a major win for the Islamic Republic, because they know that for Israel and for the United States, one of the targets is to collapse the Iranian regime, the Islamic Republic. And if the Islamic Republic survives this war, I think they will have achieved their major strategy in this war. But for Israel, I think the picture is even more complicated, because for Israel, a destabilized, chaotic, fragmented Iran would be the perfect strategy, apparently, because they do not want a strong Iran, or they don't want a unified Iran, so to speak, because they have been investing on different ethnicities in Iran to trigger them to fight against the central government. So I think there's a problem. And the Trump administration doesn't have a clear strategy.
Okay, let me go back to Michael, who's watching things very closely in DC every single day. Michael, maybe you can help us here, because there's such a long list. Initially, back in January, Trump was going to protect the people who were protesting. Then there was fears that Iran could fire a missile that could attack the continental USA, and that's not backed up by intelligence agencies. Then they raised the prospect of Iran's nuclear program, but of course Trump already said that had been obliterated. We've had the comment from the Secretary of State Marco Rubio. They had to act because otherwise Israel would act on its own. What have they settled on? What, in your view, are they trying to do here?
Well, clearly the key enduring goal that is irreducible and has been consistent is the destruction of Iran's nuclear program. And as you pointed out, President Trump claimed that it already happened last June, but we all knew that was Trump hyperbole. We all know the president speaks in this way, very dramatic and very emphatic, and quite often with exaggeration. So the program was still damaged, but there, and going after it was goal number one. It has been for the United States for 20 plus years to make sure Iran does not get a nuclear weapon. And of course, President Trump abandoned the Obama approach of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. And then Iran moved closer and closer towards a nuclear weapons level of enrichment for its uranium. So that's goal number one. That's always there. And therefore, it provides Trump a basis for saying that the operation has been successful at any point he wants, really, because there has been further damage, I believe, to the nuclear program. Goal number two is probably the missile capabilities of Iran, which, of course, we continue to see used in retaliatory strikes against American bases and Israel. Goal number three, which has already been achieved, was the killing of the Ayatollah and some of his top leadership. So I think those goals, and then of course they've talked about weakening the Iranian Navy and weakening Iran's ability to support Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthi. Those goals, again, are sort of vague. They can be calibrated or adjusted as you wish. They don't require any particular long operation because you're never going to achieve them 100%. So at whatever point you decide you've done enough, you can declare victory. So it really boils down to the issue of regime change. That's going to be the hard one. That's, in fact, I think almost impossibly hard. That's the one that President Trump is going to have to reassess.
So, Alam, the ones that we can notice are regime change. Clearly, we've had decapitation, but not regime change. And the other one is the missiles, and the missiles are still being fired. We don't have any idea what stockpile they do. We don't know how much of their missile capability was destroyed last year, because we don't know the number they started with, do we?
Exactly. We have three countries that are directly involved in this war. For President Trump, actually, the goal is not to have a goal and to enable himself to change it whenever he wants and to call himself a clever winner who won this war whenever he wanted. For Israel, is about a failed state in Iran, a collapse, a Syrianized Iran, which Israel is enabled to attack and to target whenever they want, with or without United States. For Iran is to survive. So both sides, both United States and Israel, needs to have a decisive victory to call themselves a winner. Otherwise, if Iran survives, it can claim victory. But the longest and the main strategy is to restructure the geopolitics of the region. Iran is too big, too powerful. It's not about a nuclear weapon, because it could be sorted easily a day before this attack. In June last year, it could be easily sorted, and Iran was able and happy to sign the agreement in order to ensure that they don't get the bomb. But it's been attacked twice, right in the middle of negotiations. So that means it just goes beyond the missiles and the nuclear issue. It's about the geopolitics of the region that needs to be changed.
OK. Sahan, if we go back 7 days, and it feels a lot longer than 7 days ago, that initial comment by President Trump at Mar-a-Lago, wearing the baseball cap, it wasn't just about the attack on Iran. It was about the people of Iran rising up and removing their rulers. I mean, there's no way anyone can rise up right now, given the bombardment that's going on in Tehran and across the country.
Well, I mean, it's basically impossible. I mean, look, after June, I was in Iran in November last year. And you see the devastation, and you see how people were traumatized because of these Israeli attacks in the cities like Tehran, for example, and other cities as well. So, I mean, people were mobilized in Iran anyway at the end of December, right? I mean, for very much justified, legitimate reasons, for better living conditions, working conditions, etc., etc. But to expect people to rise up against the Islamic Republic, against the regime in the middle of the war, I think it's basic nonsense. It's not going to happen. And there were some reports from some of the U.S. media outlets that the Trump administration this time is trying to use the Kurdish card for this, to rise up against Islamic Republic, against the regime. I think that is not going to materialize either, because the conditions are not really good enough for that, because they have like backing of the US or Israeli soldiers potentially, which is not going to happen on the ground. And the President Trump said there are no boots on the ground, so US soldiers are not going to be on the Iranian ground. And these ethnic groups will not rise against the regime either. And I do not see any kind of a sign of a popular uprising against the Islamic Republic. I think if this was a strategy of the Trump administration, this strategy also, I think, failed.
Well, Michael, let me bring you in on that question of possible US ground troops. President Trump has said there'll be no deal with Iran except, and this was in caps on his Truth Social platform, unconditional surrender. Can you achieve unconditional surrender, do you think, as you look at things now, without boots on the ground?
Probably not. I think President Trump's going to have to rethink what he means by that term. I suppose what he could try to do is to find the more moderate voices within the Iranian regime and insist on dealing with them and call that regime change or call that unconditional surrender, in the sense that he may determine at some point that it's acceptable for him to do a deal, let's say on future nuclear capability, with that part of the surviving Iranian regime. And if he wants to call that a successful outcome and an unconditional surrender, we may not believe him literally. But the important question is, will he sort of believe himself to the point where he's willing to make that deal? That's where I think he's going to have to go, because I agree with my colleagues that just to look at the military realities here, even if American and Israeli air power is informed by greater and better intelligence than we've ever seen before in an air campaign, and that's probably true, nonetheless, this regime is so deep, so entrenched, and capable of imposing its will, even with people who are not in big, shiny vehicles wearing easily identifiable uniforms. It has militias, it has covert means, and I think it's going to be able to suppress its own internal revolts or dissidents or opposition groups, even if we still control the skies, even if we still have excellent intelligence on some of the communications between Iranian leaders.
Michael, thank you very much. Thank you to our guests today, Michael O'Hanlon, Alam Saleh and Sahan Afajan. Al Jazeera is the place for comprehensive coverage of the war, with our teams based all across the region. Watch us on television, download our app on your phone, or find us at our website, aljazeera.com. We want to know your views on all of this as well. Post them on Facebook, facebook.com/AJ Inside Story, or you can get in touch on X. There, our username is @AJ Inside Story. I'll be back here again soon. Until next time, from me, James Bays, and the team here, stay safe and well. Bye-bye for now.